I think we can do so much cool content around teams, team leaders, organizations, wherever that might be, clubs, major events, sporting events, where you can customize and have these people create content for you, do some UGC, put that in front of customers. And because it's a proposition they haven't seen from Crocs before, it's like, how do you find those partners at the top of the pyramid and then have them kind of cascade down? In order to go one-to-one, and so you're not just buying a custom Croc to commemorate a moment or an event or a team, we've got to make it super interesting to have the customer be willing to invest the time to design, pay a premium, and have them still believe it is cooler or fits their moment better than what they can buy from our traditional product team. We don't need to rewrite the playbook here. We just need to start applying it in a way that makes sense for our business.
Nick, welcome to the D2C Podcast. I'm really excited that this came together. Crocs is definitely officially, by several orders of magnitude, the biggest brand to have come on the D2C Podcast, I think.
Wow. Yeah, big day for me too. I've been a reader, a listener of all things D2C since, 2020-ish. Yeah, it's really cool.
You have been given an extremely interesting mission within the Crocosphere. But before we dive into that, just give me a little Cole's notes on your marketer's hero's journey that's brought you here.
Sure. Yeah. So I've spent my whole career in e-commerce. I'd say really my career started in earnest in 2011 when I joined the Adidas group. And that was on the Reebok brand within their North American e-com team. I started by owning their affiliate program and then took over email and just sort of evolved from there. I was with the group for 7 years, worked on Adidas and Reebok, which was really cool to get exposure to both brands. From there, owned an e-commerce growth agency with a couple of partners, did that for a few years, which we were fortunate to exit from in 2020 in a favorable way.
Nice. Good timing.
Yeah.
Great timing.
Yeah. Although we were doing the work at home, like we were all remote, which we were doing that before there was a thing. So we sort of like let go of the agency and then work from home became a real thing. So yeah, we were trailblazers. Then I was at Legends Apparel. They had been a client of ours and I went and headed up e-com for them. So oversaw all parts of e-commerce and then was head of
Pilot House during that period, I think too, right?
Yep. Which I found through consuming all that D2C content, which was great. And then was head of growth at PSD underwear for a time. And now at Crocs. So that's the quick and dirty.
Hey, give me your what's your Crocs title again?
Some senior director of custom footwear.
Custom footwear,
which is a relatively new offering for the brand. It's not unique. Other companies offer the ability to design your own shoe or whatever their product is.
Yetis, I'm sure, have a similar sort of division and.
Yep, and a lot of the our footwear competitors have them as well. But it's a relatively new offering for Crocs and. Only in the US right now. And it's, you've got to buy minimums of 6. It's not 1-to-1. It's like early stages of the program, but there's been enough appetite and demand in the first year and a half of the program that we see there's a big opportunity. And I've been brought in to help recognize that opportunity.
We just had Frost Buddy speak at our event and his sort of how easy it is to spin up multiple variations of products now, how easy it is to get in, and Crocs are like a perfect canvas in a lot of ways for people's personalities. So the sort of prospect of infinite customizability is you can just see how tangible it is. And it's interesting, for Crocs just to, as a almost $4 billion business, to be thinking about all these other different growth avenues, because your growth goals aren't crazy in the first little while here, but they still recognize it as this huge opportunity.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, frankly, everybody wants more growth, right? And I don't think it's unrealistic to see well beyond what we're even forecasting for next year. Frankly, I think part of the challenge, there's operational stuff we need to fix because these first year and a half, again, has been, I don't like to call it MVP phase, but it's effectively what it's been. So, we need to do some things that are the less sexy part of the business, operationally to be set up to really capture what we predict or project for demand. But custom is a really interesting business, which I'm learning a ton about because I had a little exposure to it when I was at Reebok, when you could do custom shoes there, and with Adidas, same thing. But really understanding the buying cycle and just all the nuances of a custom business it's been really interesting. We'll get into it a lot more as we go here, but
how is it discovered? I imagine discovery has to be one of the biggest challenges because you don't know what you don't know, and Crocs already has how many SKUs? SKUs. How many SKUs do you know how many SKUs does ChatGPT know how many SKUs Crocs has?
I have no idea. Well, maybe it can tell us, and I wonder if it's accurate. I wouldn't be able to tell you if it's not accurate.
No, that's
Yeah,
true.
like one thing as an example, like you said it's kind of an infinite canvas, right? This like really cool but yet simple shoe that you could do lots of things with, and you can create the Jibbit charms. But that's actually part of the problem too. Is like, how do you put up guardrails to a customer? When in reality we could do almost anything. You can slap almost any kind of a design onto these shoes, but too blank of a canvas and too wide of an aperture kind of gives that paralysis to the customer who doesn't know how to design. So how do you give them guardrails and frameworks to design within that allow them to create something they really like, yet aren't so limiting and also aren't so broad that they don't know what to do? So we have ideas on, and I have ideas on how we can continue to improve that. And it could be bringing in things like AI, where you can prompt it and it can help you design or do a better job of, manipulating photos that you've taken or things you've drawn and actually turning that into a design that's suitable for a clog. So yeah, I think we're just like at the very beginning stages here of what this could be. And then that's why I think it's so exciting.
So who's the customer now?
Right now, I guess I'll start by saying we don't sell 1-to-1, meaning you've got to buy minimums of 6, which is not a crazy amount, but it just limits, again, that person who wants a single. And that's by design in many ways for now. But where we're seeing a ton of success is what we'll call our B2B or corporate side. So companies that want to gift their employees or gift their VIP clients, or they're running an event and they want to have event branded or company branded, whatever that might be, Crocs. And then the other area we're seeing a ton of success in is with sports teams. And so anywhere from youth up to, collegiate level folks that want to buy for their team, put their team colors and logo, whatever that might be, and buy for the whole team. And so we're seeing lots of other areas of success, but those two have been the dominant, and that's where we're starting to like double down.
Crocs are like an almost mythical like pilot house. I think we've actually made some through, or maybe, we may have customized them somehow. I don't know if it's through your program or somewhere else, but we do have pilot house Crocs with gibbets and everything, and they are the most prized thing in our like company hierarchy of gifts. So I can see them being. What? Sorry.
What do you have to do as an employee to earn a pair?
I actually, you know what? I'm thinking about it, and I've been here a long time. I haven't got them yet, so I think it may have just been more of a one-off on the Pilot House side versus the D2C side. But I'm gonna bring them back. This conversation is definitely gonna reignite the Crocs in our ecosystem sort of discussion. Because they're just, and I didn't even like, Crocs just found me. I have a bizarre story about how I got a pair of Crocs, but I don't want to dive into it on the podcast. But they're just such a functional shoe. They're just, so they really are a really good like basic denomination, and the fact that you can customize them infinitely is super interesting.
Yeah, it's funny how I've heard the story from a lot of folks now that I've worked there, and everyone kind of tells me their Crocs journey. And so many times, especially like I'm 37 years old, and I think people who are my age, there was a time where they were like the odd shoe when we were in our 20s, right? Where it was like, oh, that's like, I don't know if that's for me. And then it became a phenomenon where everybody's wearing them. But if your mindset is still in that, prior days, it might be harder for you to sort of break into Crocs land. And so many times I've heard people say, yeah, like I got them and I just kind of wore them around the house, or I wore them to like mow the lawn. But the next thing I know, I caught myself like I wore them on my run to the grocery store. And the next thing I was picking up my kids in them. And now I just wear them all the time, right? Like you have whatever that like entry point is, and then it just expands because you're like, these are the most comfortable things. I'm just throwing them on all the time.
All into the Crocs, basically. Yeah. That's hilarious. Okay, so you have your customer types, which perfectly makes sense. My head is actually swimming with some interesting ideas of collaborations, and I know we'll get into collaborations because this is the ultimate collaboration tool. But right now, how are you being discovered by these customers?
It's fairly organic. So the interesting part, or one of the things that gets me really interesting, is, as I told you, a lot of my background has been in growth and digital marketing, and there's been very little of that to date. It's been fairly organic growth. We have sales folks who are doing some, nurturing inbound leads. There's a lead capture form on the site. If you go to crocs.com, you see customize in the nav. You can click the button that says start designing, and a lot of people find it that way. And then I think there's a lot of word of mouth, people who design their own, and then kind of it spreads. But there's also an intake form, as you scroll down the page, where people who want to learn more can. And a lot of times a really big corporate order will come through that way. People who are going to spend really large dollars maybe don't feel super confident designing the shoe themselves. And so those are the ways that we're getting to them. But ultimately, it's really organic, or our sales team who focuses specifically on custom, doing outreach. And I think that's what's really interesting is I can now apply a lot of my growth background, which has been in more traditional D2C, and for next year, build out how do we take these tried and true tactics that have, again, I've applied into what I'd say are more traditional see now, buy now, single item AOVs between $50 and $125, and apply that to a business that has a longer buying cycle, minimums, therefore a higher AOV, in the thousands versus the tens or hundreds. And so it's going to be a lot to learn, but I'm super excited to apply those things here.
Broadly speaking, what is sort of your go-to market strategy once you are spending externally on media?
I mean, look, I'm going to start with some of the basics, right? Like the things that everybody does. We're going to go into paid social, and we're going to leverage creators who are or partnerships in the sports space as an example. Like I don't imagine we'll spend a ton outwardly on the corporate vertical. That'll probably be a little more inbound in sales folks. When we talk about use the sports pillar as the other big one, I think we can do so much cool content around teams or team leaders, organizations, whatever that might be, clubs, major events, sporting events, where you can customize and have these people create content for you, do some UGC, all the things that, again, folks are doing in spades today, but just put that in front of customers. And because it's a proposition they haven't seen from Crocs before, I think the partnership ecosystem will be really big as well. I don't want to spend so much time for our sales team, for example, calling sports teams or organizations that are maybe, in your town where they've got like a league that has 10 teams and each team has 10 people. That could be a really good business. But if they can go to the national organization that has thousands of teams or hundreds of teams, around the country, and then how do those people then bring that back home, right? You're a high level soccer player, so you're on a bunch of travel teams and club teams. How do we go to that club team? Because then we know hopefully all of those players, they get their club team, Croc, want to go back to their school team that they play in the fall and do the same thing. So it's like, how do you find those partners at the kind of the top of the funnel, if you will, at the top of the pyramid, and then have them kind of cascade down? So there's tons of opportunity.
I like it. I could see it being big in, with creators potentially as well. Like who have, like, I think of like Strawberry Milk Mob, for instance, that creates, bathing suits, just having those custom Strawberry Milk Mob, she's probably she might be at that full collab level. Like, and then I think that's one thing to think of how this differs from, because Crocs does tons of collabs, like I don't know how many, but a lot of collabs every year. Right. So I guess you just differentiate these just at a different level.
Yeah. And frankly, it's something we still work through internally. Like there are going to be a certain type of partner that makes more sense for our partnerships team to do a full on collaboration. And frankly, the capabilities of my team are lesser than that of our global partnerships team. They take 12, 18 months of design and go-to-market planning. They can do a lot more from a design and development perspective with that much time and with their capabilities. They do custom packaging. They're rock stars in what they do. But they have, let's just say, make up numbers, let's say they have 15 slots in their calendar in a year to do those really big collaborations. There might be 50 partners that might make sense, but don't fit in the calendar for this year. And is there a way that maybe my team can help, and do something that's, a step down or half step down, or not down, but just different, right? We can't maybe do custom packaging, and we can't have as complex of a design, but can still do something really exciting for everybody involved. So yeah, candidly, we're figuring that out. But I think the exciting part is everyone sees the opportunity, and now we've just got to figure out the way to do it that makes the most sense for the business and for all the players on all sides of the table.
And then that creation process becomes a huge part of your funnel, making sure it's intuitive, making sure people understand its capabilities and limitations. What mark do you think it's in now, or is it in its final form, or have you been working on it? And where do you want to go with it?
In terms of what the customer
the
does,
UI, UI, yeah.
I would say it's still early phase. Like again, I don't like using the word MVP because it almost diminishes what's been done by the team. So again, I've only been at the company for about a month, so I can't take credit for any of the success that's happened to date, but they've done a great job. And when you say MVP, I feel like it almost diminishes that. So I'm trying not to use those words, but I'd say it's early days, right? We know the UX can get better. We're going to put more models in. Right now, you can get the standard traditional clog that everybody thinks of when they think of Crocs, and you can get our what we'll call a work clog, which has slip resistant bottom and no holes on the top, because there are certain verticals that need that. But that's it. Like I could see us putting slides in the future, and I could see us maybe getting a broader color palette or getting different textures. And there's lots of places we can go just from what you can design. But then again, I think even Can we integrate AI to make design simpler, somehow at the same time more robust yet simpler? Like that's a really hard thing to like give more but make it easier. But there's tons of ways I think we can do that. So yeah, every part of the business has we have a roadmap being built on how we can get better, and there's no that's not any different for the UI as well.
AI and infinite customization is sort of the like infinite segmentation on your emails or infinite, variations in your ads. It feels like that's sort of where we're going in the next little while. So I noticed when you were talking about your AOV or your minimums that you have to order that you said for now, because like I'm sure you can envision like a fully custom world where people are just buying one pair.
Yeah. I think everyone could be excited about that internally. We're certainly talking about it, but I believe our experience of designing, so that UI you've talked about, it needs to be easier, maybe more exciting. And what I mean by more exciting is I'll call it like our inline products, or the regular product team that designs everything you buy at the stores or online. They're like best in class, right? No matter what your interest is, your style type, your personality type, you can find something that we make that aligns perfectly. Like there's just such a broad range. So in order to go one to one, and so you're not just buying a custom Croc to commemorate a moment or an event or a team, we've got to make it super interesting to have the customer be willing to invest the time to design, pay a premium because it's being made one to one versus en masse, and have them still believe it is cooler or fits their moment better than what they can buy from our traditional product team, which again, they like, it's hard to beat what they do. So even if you said operationally we're totally already set up to do one to one, which we're still working towards, I don't yet think we've unlocked the power of this customer facing tool to make it a proposition that would be winning at that level right now.
I know it's early days and maybe some stuff is happening maybe before you got there, but have there been any sort of like content marketing or collab wins that you could speak of?
Yeah, and I'd be very careful to say these are not collabs. And that's like, I'm kind of joking, but not really. Like that's, I talk earlier of like, there's a level of what we call our collaborations versus being a custom product. But there have been areas, there's one we're working on right now that I think is interesting, which I probably shouldn't talk about. So one in the past that happened before I got there was a partnership with a DJ, or I don't know how they prefer to be referred to, as a house or DJ. LS Dreams is his name.
Okay.
And they worked on a custom design. It was a 2-day selling window. So the way that we do a lot of these, because it's all one-to-one, is we set like a pre-sell window, and it's all basically a pre-sell. And so we say, hey, you've got until X day to place your order. And once that window closes, we batch them, send them to the factory, and they create it, right? And so that's just for all the efficiencies we need to get. So it was like over a 2-day window, it sold a significant amount of product, far more than I think was even expected, which now opened up the doors to now other artists want to do this. And so I think there's a real opportunity to tap into that creator level, knowing that they've got an audience who loves them and what they do and what they create. And how do we capitalize on that? Again, especially like kudos to our partnerships team and all the collaborations they do, not just with brands, but with creators and musicians. But they have a limited number of slots in their calendar. So they're looking at, folks who have, influence in an audience globally at a certain level. And so maybe an artist who's really only relevant in the US might not make sense, right? As an example. But can we help fill that gap and still get them excited, get their audience excited, and fill that need? So again, still things we're working through, but we've seen a little bit of it already in some tests, and it's shown promise.
I'm envisioning Crocstarter. Kickstarter, but for getting your Crocs, and you'd actually have different, creators competing to kind of get their Crocs to the top, basically. And the ones that win, maybe they become collabs, or they become, they go to the main brand or something like that. But Kickstarter for Crocs, hear me out.
I'm noting it. That's it. And I'll give you a kickback if we ever run this, you'll get a kick. How's that?
Oh, dude, let's do it. A Croc back. I'm in 100%. It's funny you mentioned DJs. One of my favorite local DJs here in Victoria is called DJ Sport Mode, which refers to, of course, that critical moment where you've got to take the back of your Croc and flip it down for extra support, the strap.
Yeah. Well, we got to work together, make that connection.
DJ Sport Mode for sure. Talk about the international opportunity for what you're doing as well. I think Crocs is probably like, it's got to be their fastest growth region is international. Like people, I know in Asia, for instance, have been wearing Croc and Croc-like shoes for decades before we have even. Talk about that international opportunity a bit.
Yeah, we don't even offer custom Crocs internationally. So like
No.
from zero means like, the ceiling, it's just like infinite, it's huge. I think right now we still want to capitalize on the untapped here in the US, but I would say like if you apply some of the things I've said earlier, there might be partnerships that are super relevant in a smaller country in Europe, for example, that maybe at a global level don't, fit into the calendar. But can we fill that gap, right? And so that's huge. But then even as we just use the current applications that we have today, which is corporate and teams and these other like smaller groups, they exist everywhere, right? And so I think once we get the operation hashed out on the back end, which is really what it is today, it's how do we make sure we can support that internationally? And it's really, for some folks, really uninteresting things like shipping and logistics and trade agreements. And like, fortunately, our business does this every day. We ship Crocs everywhere around the globe, for resale. So we've just got to like bring that down to our level. And yeah, I think I see immense opportunity even just within the US. And so that's, the biggest focus for next year. But of course, people internally who run and work in those other markets are already asking for it. So they see the demand, and I trust that they have their finger on the pulse of their market to know that it can be a success.
Super cool. So what are you kind of alluded to, you mentioned them briefly, but like maybe go a little bit deeper on the avenues of growth that you're going to be focusing on most as sort of GM of this product.
Sure. Before I do, I'm like chuckling myself. I don't know if you caught it. I almost, when I was talking about the opportunity, I almost referenced one of my favorite quotes, which is "the ceiling is the roof." I don't know if that lands for you, Michael Jordan. I almost said, the ceiling is the roof on the opportunity here, which is like unintentional, but I say that so often as a joke that it's crept into like, my vocabulary accidentally.
Nice.
But yeah, so I guess for growth tactics for next year, again, I would say some of the things like paid social, really easy. I think the partner ecosystem and leaning into creators with influence is going to be a huge opportunity for us. Frankly, we have not even really tapped into just like the existing lifecycle channels to the way we could, right? And that's to no one's discredit or disservice. Everyone's here to support, but getting more exposure in the lifecycle team who runs for North America, like just getting more present with them and finding the opportunities in the journey. Hey, if you've bought 3 Crocs from .com before, or 5 or whatever the number is, you're probably more likely to take the time to design a pair and buy them for your group, right? Than if you've bought one time. So just using really basic practices that everyone who's listening to this, I'm sure like it's so obvious to them. But there's just things we haven't applied here because it is such a new program and we've got a very lean team who's been doing 1,000 things to get it moving. But I think we can tap into the basics and still have a lot of upside for next year.
You've got like, when you've got a root domain like Crocs, like the SEO plan, like eventually for the best wedding party gift, the best bridal shower gift, the best groomsman gift, like you could be having a cascade of SEO about those moments, and this would be the perfect item for that.
Yeah, for sure. And each of those moments or not all of them, but a lot of them also have that, I'll call like the middleman, like the dealer layer. Like I didn't mention this earlier, but a lot of the big companies that are placing orders, a lot of them work with a promotional products company or person who like does all their swag, right? And so we're starting to get into that layer, which is effectively our version of wholesale for my team. But also there's, I don't know, are there wedding planners? I know there are, but is that interesting for wedding planners to be offering this, putting this in front of their people, and there's some kind of business there? Or I don't know, like there's got to be this other, the not, right? Can you go on these sites that help you get inspiration for your wedding? Can we be placed there somehow? And it's all just, again, tried and true, traditional partnership, affiliate, whatever. We don't need to, totally rewrite the playbook here. We just need to start applying it in a way that makes sense for our business.
Come on the D2C podcast, spread the word that, this is now something. I can think of brands in our audience. Like I can think of a brand that I know that makes like football accoutrement. They have a Victor. They make all sorts of different shivers and visors and stuff for football. And I feel like, they could be very easily offering, custom branded Crocs as well. And I think a lot of brands would jump at the opportunity for that feeling, even if it's not a full level collab. They'll have a lot of magnetism to Crocs because of who you are.
For sure. And we're seeing a lot of folks just recognize the value of the product, even the perceived value being even greater than the actual value. And what I mean is, without saying names, there's a couple of major sports organizations and major professional leagues who are looking for gifts for their season ticket holders. And they're thinking this would be an amazing thing, right? And if you were to get I'm a Patriots fan, it's not the Patriots, but let's just, I'm a Patriots fan or a Celtics fan, right? Growing up in the Boston area. If I was a season ticket holder and they gave me a pair of team issued Crocs that are different than the ones that you can even buy, like the officially licensed product you can buy in the gift store or the pro shop. What an amazing perceived value, right? Hey, they only made 5,000, 10,000, whatever the number is of these, and I got a pair. That is worth way more than the $70-ish MSRP on these things, right? So, there's a ton of excitement already, which I can't wait for us to just get the word out in mass and see where we can take it.
I'm excited to keep up with you and follow you on this custom Croc journey. If people want to follow you along, where do you recommend they do that? On somewhere like LinkedIn?
Yeah, you can definitely find me on LinkedIn. Nick, last name's Lamothe, for those of you who aren't reading or kind of watching as you're on your drive-in. You can find me there. That's where I do most of anything I do socially. I'm like private accounts elsewhere, fairly private guy, but yeah, you can find me there. You can reach out to me there if you're interested in buying some custom Crocs for your team or your company. If you go to crocs.com and click customize, you can either design your own right there. You can scroll down a little further to our form if you need some help or need a little more information. And our team's great. We help people every day make these things happen. So excited to work with anybody who comes through.
I think that's a huge opportunity. Just remember how valuable the Crocs are in the Pilot House ecosystem. They could be valuable in your company ecosystem as well. Thanks for coming on today, man. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I actually think, a lot of the things we're going to do are taken from even the folks that are already in your community. So, probably nothing groundbreaking in terms of tactics here because we're all kind of trying a lot of the things that you're helping us learn about. But just always excited to talk about this project I'm working on now and this part of the business because I think, again, it's really exciting and there's almost endless possibilities. And I'm sure I'll even get some people reaching out with their ideas of where we could take it, which would be super cool too.
I'm sure like customization is something we've talked about a lot as just sort of an edge that people can have in their business as well when they're able to offer it. And so I feel like there's probably a lot that people could take from you as well.
Yeah, hopefully.
Keep on crocking in the free world. Oh, we might have to edit that out.
I love that. You've dropped at least 3 taglines that you need to trademark here.
The ceiling is the roof, by the way. Also, that's a lyric from one of my favorite Sharon Van Etten songs that I'll send you a link of. But there's a beautiful song where she says that lyric and it really stuck with me. So that's what I thought you were referencing. I actually didn't know it was Michael Jordan, but now I know.
Oh, one of my all-time favorite quotes. The ceiling is the roof. That's how big the opportunity is.
Yeah, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Michael Jordan, Michael Scott, Eric Dick.
There you go.
Thanks so much for listening to today's episode. If you're not a subscriber to our newsletter, you can do that right now at directtoconsumer.co. I'm Eric Dick, and this has been the D2C Podcast. We'll see you next time.